On the 12th night, the youngest boy told Paul about the girl at the fire. He said she'd been there every night. Program clothing, dark hair. She never spoke. Paul looked. Pine needles and shadow. No girl.
Ethan, maybe it was a reflection. The fire plays tricks.
She sits right there. Same time. Dark hair. Mountain patch on the sweatshirt.
Paul noted the patch detail. The boys had never seen that design. It was from the original program. A coincidence, or the early warning of a shared delusion. Later, in his tent, he wrote up a possible psychiatric event. Standard protocol, but his pen hesitated over the words. 6 years in the field. He'd seen kids lie to avoid chores, to get attention. This felt different. The fire died to embers. The boys slept. Paul stayed awake, listening to the wind, in the junipers, already rehearsing what he'd say on the sat phone. He didn't know that call would end his career, or that the answer had been waiting 30 years in a manila folder at base. In the morning light, Paul watched the boys strike camp. He searched for any sign that Ethan had passed the story around. They worked in silence. No whispers, no glances. If they knew something, they'd buried it deep. That evening, as the fire caught, Paul took Marcus aside near the tree line.
Marcus, have you seen anything unusual at the fire? Ethan told me he's been seeing something.
The girl. Yeah, I saw her. I didn't say nothing because I thought I was losing it.
Describe her. Everything you remember.
Dark hair, program sweatshirt, the old patch with the mountain. She sits on that log and never moves.
Identical. He hadn't heard Ethan's report. This isn't a prank.
One by one, he brought the other boys away from the fire. By the end of the hour, he had 4 independent descriptions, all matched. Paul opened his logbook again. The pen shook. A possible psychiatric event for 1 kid, maybe. For 5, it was a lie his training couldn't name. On the 3rd night, the fire was lit under a heavy sky. Paul watched the boys' faces, waiting for the hour after check-in. One by one, their eyes found the same empty log. No one spoke. The silence was filled with something he couldn't see.
She's sitting right there. The same girl. You really don't see her.
All 5. Same time, same description. Nothing in front of my eyes.
He walked to the log, knelt, pressed his palm into the dirt. No warmth, no indent. The air smelled only of pine and ash.
Everyone, stay calm. I am calling base camp. No one leaves the fire.
He grabbed the sat phone from his pack and trudged to the rocky outcrop, beyond the trees, where the signal held. The phone's ringtone buzzed against his ear. In the base camp office, a desk phone started flashing. Paul listened to the ring, rehearsing the words that would shatter his career. He could already hear the pause on the other end. The phone clicked, a dial tone. Then it rang, and rang. Reynolds answered on the 5th ring. Paul didn't waste time. He told him about the fire, the boys describing a girl, the clothing with the old patch.
The patch has a mountain and a pine tree. They've never seen this logo on any current gear. It's the old design.
The line went quiet. Paul heard Reynolds set the receiver down on the desk for a moment. Then the sound of a hand gripping the plastic.
Describe the clothing again. Exactly.
Dark sweatshirt, a worn patch on the sleeve, a mountain with a pine tree, the kind from the early days.
Reynolds said nothing. Paul could hear him breathing, slow and deliberate, like a man counting down to something.
Keep the group calm. An extraction team will reach you in 12 hours. Do not discuss this further.
Why? What's going on? You went silent as soon as I described her clothes.
Reynolds didn't answer. He repeated the order and hung up. The dial tone buzzed in Paul's ear. Paul walked back to the fire and told the boys to stay close. Help was coming. The 12-hour countdown had begun, and he knew nothing. The hours crawled. Paul made them gather firewood, dig a new latrine, anything to keep their hands busy. But the silence between tasks grew heavier each time. When darkness came, they built the fire higher than before. The boys huddled close, their eyes fixed on the same empty log. The hour after check-in passed without a word.
She's here. She looks sad tonight. Not just blank, sad. And she's staring at you, Paul. Only at you.
Staring at me. What do you mean?
Her eyes don't move. She just watches you, like she's waiting for something.
Paul looked where Ethan pointed. Cold air settled on his skin, but no shape, no shadow. The log was bare. His own shadow flickered behind him.
They're terrified, and now it's on me. What does she want?
He knelt at the log again. The dirt felt cold, almost damp, though the sky was dry. The hair on his arms stood up. He found no impression, no scent, only the sense of being watched from a place his eyes couldn't reach. Paul returned to the fire, isolated among his own group. The countdown ticked. 10 hours remained, and the girl wasn't leaving. Sometime after midnight, Paul pulled out his phone. If his eyes couldn't catch her, maybe the camera could. He aimed at the log where the boys stared. They said she hadn't moved. He pressed the shutter. The screen showed firelight and pine needles. No girl. He showed the image to Ethan.
There's nothing on the screen, but she's right there. Why can't it see her either?
Paul lowered the phone. The evidence he wanted didn't exist, but the boys' faces said it was there. Marcus spoke up then, his voice harder than it had been all night. He wasn't asking permission anymore.
Paul, did Base know about this before we left? You called, and now we're out in the middle of the night with an extraction coming. What did they tell you?
They didn't tell me anything. They just said to keep you calm and wait. That's all. And that's exactly what's wrong. Reynolds didn't ask a single question. He knew the old patch. He knew.
The fire crackled. No one spoke. The question hung there, unanswered. As the hours dragged toward dawn, the fire burned low. The boys' eyes shifted from the log to the tree line. Ethan whispered,
She's not on the log anymore. She's standing back there by the juniper.
Paul stood. The boys all pointed the same way. He walked toward the trees, the cold deep in his chest. He stopped where they pointed. No one in sight, but the air turned sharp, and every hair on his body lifted.
I can't see her, but she's here, right in front of me.
Then, faint yellow beams cut through the dark. Headlamps, moving on the ridge. The extraction team.
There, the lights, they're coming.
Paul backed away from the cold spot, eyes still on the empty space. Then he turned and faced the approaching figures. The rescue team emerged from the pre-dawn dark. 4 shadows in heavy gear. They didn't ask questions. They just started moving the group. The girl was gone, or she'd never been there. Paul helped break camp with a tremor in his hands, waiting for answers that wouldn't come. The extraction leader gave Paul a brief nod. No questions about the night, just a quiet order to break camp in 10. They hiked in line. The boys guarded between agents. No one spoke. The desert felt like an accusation. At base camp gate, floodlights glared. Paul waited for someone to demand his notes. No one did. A staff member guided the boys toward the intake door. Paul moved to follow, but another hand caught his arm.
Where are you taking them? I am their instructor. I need to stay with them.
The man didn't answer. He led Paul down a quiet hall, past blank doors, into a windowless room. They took his pack, his sat phone. Then the lock clicked, and he was alone.
They're treating me like a threat, like I brought something back from that camp.
An hour passed, then another. The chair was hard, the overhead light humming into his skull. The lock turned. Reynolds entered with a worn manila folder. He avoided Paul's eyes and sat down. The door clicked shut behind Reynolds with a finality that echoed in the small room. He set the folder on the table between them, his expression unreadable.
This conversation is confidential. Nothing leaves this room. Do you understand?
I understand, but I need to know what's happening. Those boys saw something real, something you knew about.
Reynolds didn't flinch. He pulled out the chair opposite Paul and sat down heavily, the folder still closed, his weathered hands folded on top of it.
You are going to tell me everything, from the first report to the moment extraction arrived. No detail is too small.
This isn't a supervisor asking for a report. This is a man who already knows the answer.
Paul began. He described the fire, the log, the patch. He didn't leave out his own failure to see. His voice shook by the time he reached the phone call.
The patch was the old design, mountain and pine tree. Once I told you, you went silent. Why?
Reynolds's fingers tightened on the folder. He looked at Paul, then slowly turned the folder to face him. He opened the cover, then paused. His next words fell like stones. Some questions, once answered, can't be taken back. Reynolds slid a single photograph from the folder, a black and white relic, and pushed it across the cold metal table. The girl in the photo was maybe 14, dark hair pulled back, wearing a program sweatshirt with the mountain and pine patch.
Who is this? That patch. It's the exact one the boys described, word for word.
Her name was Margaret. She went missing from a camp in 1986, before the program went single-sex. She was never found.
1986. Same clothes, same age. The boys saw a dead girl, a ghost, and I couldn't.
The air left his lungs. 6 years of field training buckled under the weight of a single impossible fact.
They've been seeing the ghost of a girl who vanished 30 years ago. How is that possible?
Every detail matches her file. The clothing, the age. I don't know how they saw her, but it's Margaret.
Paul stared at the photograph. The girl's eyes held no answers, only a static, decades-old gaze that had followed him from the fire. His fingers trembled as he set the picture down. He didn't yet know the question forming in his throat would break the last of his certainty.
Tell me the whole story, from the beginning. No more holding back.
Reynolds leaned back, his face carved in the harsh light. He spoke like a man rehearsing a script.
The summer of '86, we had a mixed group. Margaret was quiet, no trouble. One night, she wandered from camp. We searched for weeks, never found a trace.
He mentioned a search grid, volunteers, official inquiries, but his voice flattened when he said the file was closed.
Closed. You have a ghost confirming she's still out there. And you closed the file?
There was nothing more we could do. It was decades ago. The program moved on.
Moved on. They buried her, and now she's walking back to the fire. What aren't you telling me? When I described the clothes on the phone, you went silent. You already knew.
Reynolds's jaw tightened. He didn't answer, just stared at the folder, as if it might defend him. The silence between them thickened, a third presence in the room. Paul understood then that the truth about Margaret was locked inside a silence older than his career.
One more thing. Why the boys? Why could they see her, and I couldn't?
The question landed like a blade. Reynolds's face emptied. His lips parted, then pressed shut. No answer. The air thickened. The buzzing light overhead seemed to grow louder in the stretch of seconds.
Say something. You know, don't you? Why I couldn't see her when every kid at that fire did.
Reynolds's gaze dropped. For a split second, Paul saw something that might have been grief or might have been warning. Then it vanished.
He won't say it. He'd rather let me walk out with this than admit what the program did.
The silence stretched until it became a wall. Reynolds did not move, did not speak. The folder stayed open, but the file was closed. Finally, Reynolds reached for the photograph and slipped it back into the folder. His hands were steady. He stood, pushed his chair back, and left the photograph lying between them, like a confession that couldn't be spoken.
Why won't you answer? You owe me that much.
Paul left the office in a daze. His footsteps hollowed down the hallway. The photograph's image was seared behind his eyes. He pushed through the exterior door and stood in the yard, gasping. The desert sun made everything too sharp. A voice stopped him. The camp cook stood in the kitchen doorway. "Did you meet her tonight?" she asked, her tone careful.
You know about her?
The woman nodded, her eyes steady. She'd been here since the early years. Every veteran staff member must know. She stepped back inside. Paul stood alone under the floodlights, the camp around him suddenly feeling like a cage.
They all know. The whole program is complicit. I can't stay here.
He started walking toward the bunkhouse, each step grinding down the last of his loyalty. By the time he reached the door, he was already writing the resignation letter in his head. He would leave within the month. The photograph would go with him. Night in the bunkhouse felt like a held breath. Paul lay on the cot, staring at the ceiling, his mind replaying the photograph.
Every time I close my eyes, I see her. The patch on her sleeve like a stain.
Around 4 in the morning, he sat up, found a pen and a stray sheet of paper. His hands were cold.
Don't explain. Just state it. Effective immediately. Don't give them anything more.
The words came out small and clinical. He read them back, rehearsing the sound of his voice in the meeting that would follow.
I know about Margaret. I know the program closed the file and kept the secret. You can keep your explanation.
He folded the paper into thirds, stood up, dressed in the dark, and walked out into the gray light of early morning.
Why didn't they warn us? All those trips, and not a single word.
His boots crunched on the gravel. The office building loomed. The resignation was only part of what he needed to deliver. He stopped outside Reynolds' door, the letter damp in his grip. For a long moment, he didn't knock. Paul knocked once and opened the door. Reynolds was already seated, hands folded as if he'd been waiting.
Here. Effective immediately. I won't ask why you kept the secret, but I am done asking.
Reynolds glanced at the paper, nudged it with a single finger, and slid it back. No surprise, no protest.
I won't fight it. But before you go, there's one more form, non-disclosure. Standard for incidents like this.
He pulled a single-page document from a drawer and placed it next to the resignation. The heading was stark, confidentiality agreement.
He won't even ask me to stay. Just wants to make sure I never speak about her. What's the point? You already won't tell me anything. What is there left to silence?
Standard procedure. Any incident that involves a missing person investigation requires a legal block. Sign, and your exit will be clean.
Paul signed without reading the fine print. The pen scratched across the page, completing a transaction he'd never imagined. Reynolds slid the signed paper into a file and stood. The meeting was over. Paul was no longer an employee of the program. In the bunkhouse, Paul stuffed his gear into the canvas duffel. His movements were mechanical, final. He reached the photograph of Margaret, still loose where Reynolds had left it on the table. He slid the picture into a side pocket, his thumb brushing the girl's static face. Outside, the transport van waited. The boys filed in, heads down, exhausted. Ethan glanced back, holding Paul's gaze. No anger, no tears, just the long look of a kid who'd seen too much.
He knows. They all know something followed us home. I am leaving them with it. With her. What kind of person does that?
He climbed into his truck, setting the duffel on the passenger seat. The photograph was now his only proof. The engine turned over. Paul pulled onto the dirt road without looking back. The desert swallowed the camp. The photograph rested in the seat beside him, a ghost now riding shotgun. Months later, Paul's life contracted to a one-room apartment in a quiet city. The desert felt like a different existence. He found a job he never discussed, a routine that required no memory. The photograph went into a desk drawer, buried under utility bills. But most nights, after the world went quiet, he opened the drawer and set the picture under the lamp.
Her face is seared into my memory. The patch, the hair. Why couldn't I see you?
He'd found an old article in a library archive. Teen vanishes from wilderness camp. The headline read, "A grainy photo of search teams combing a canyon." He placed the photograph beside the article. Same Kemp, same silence. 30 years, and nothing had changed. Except now, he carried the weight of it. The ritual became nightly. He'd sit in the dark, the photo in his hands, waiting for something he couldn't name. The apartment felt smaller each night, as if the walls were leaning in. The only light came from the lamp, pooling around the photograph. He'd catch himself listening for footsteps that weren't there, scanning the corners for a shape that never came. One night, without ceremony, the drawer stayed open. The photograph lay on the desk, face up, as the last light died outside. Paul was staring at the photograph when the temperature dropped, a sudden sharpness that had no draft. The hair on his arms stood up, and his next exhale clouded in front of his face.
The same cold, like the campfire log. She's here.
The lamp on his desk flickered once, then held. The silence felt pressed against his ears.
Margaret?
No answer. But the cold didn't retreat. It settled against his skin like a second layer of air.
I can feel you, right there. But I can't see you. Why?
He stared into the dark corner where the hallway met the living room. Nothing visible. Every instinct screamed that something stood there. The cold held for 1 minute. 2. He didn't move, didn't breathe deep. Then slowly, it began to fade. The lamp steadied. The room was his own again, but it no longer felt safe. The photograph had invited something, and it had answered. The cold had lifted, but Paul remained frozen in his chair, his eyes on the dark hallway. Finally, he forced himself to move. He took the photograph and slid it back into the drawer, sealing it away. He left the lamp on and sat on the edge of his bed until exhaustion pulled him under. When he woke, gray morning light filled the apartment. The lamp was still on. Useless. He went to the desk and saw it immediately. A braided bracelet, threads faded, resting beside the closed drawer.
That wasn't here last night. I would have seen it.
He picked it up. The threads were worn, the knot still tight. It smelled faintly of earth and something floral. He knew it was hers. The cold had left it behind. A calling card from the dead. He opened the drawer, took out the photograph, and placed the bracelet beside her image. The two objects sat together, a portrait and a token, the beginning of an altar he never intended. He searched for the bracelet's origin, but old photographs and craft patterns turned up nothing. No match, no record. It existed only on his desk, beside the photograph. He stopped hiding the picture. It stayed on the desk, Margaret's face watching the room. Some evenings, the cold crept back in the corner of his eye, a subtle pressure that never fully left. He no longer called out to it. The name Margaret had become a private thought, never spoken. His research had told him enough. The program erased her, and the world forgot. He was now the keeper of her memory, bound by a photograph and a braided thread.
I'll never know what happened that night, but you are here, and I am not leaving.
The cold spots came and went, always in the same place, always without form, and Paul lived with the silence, the photograph, and the girl who still sat at the fire he would never see. One night, Paul's exhaustion pulled him into a sleep deeper than any in months. He was back at the campfire, the boys around him, the desert cold and familiar, and on the log across from him, a girl sat where he had always seen nothing. Margaret. He could see her, clear as memory. The patch, the dark hair, the quiet hands.
You are real. I can see you.
She did not speak. Her expression was not sad, but expectant, as if she had been waiting for him to arrive. The fire held them both in its glow, and for a moment, 30 years collapsed into a single shared gaze. Then the image fractured. Paul's eyes snapped open to the dark ceiling of his apartment. He gasped. The photograph and bracelet still on the desk, unchanged, but something in him had shifted.
It wasn't just a dream. She was there, waiting. For what?
He pushed the blanket aside and walked to the desk. The cold air in the room still carried the faint scent of juniper. The bracelet was gone. The spot where it had rested was empty. The wood bare. In its place lay a single pine cone, still green and fresh, as if just fallen from a desert tree. He lifted it, the scent sharp and real, the same air he'd breathed at the campfire 30 years ago. He set the pine cone beside the photograph. Two objects now, her face and a piece of her world. She had come again. She had taken something and left something. The exchange was deliberate. He didn't understand the rules. He didn't know what she was waiting for. But he accepted it. He returned to bed, the cold still present, the smell of juniper settling into the dark. The photo and the pine cone remained on the desk, a vigil that would not end. And Paul closed his eyes, the desert still breathing in his room.